All right, thank you for joining me for the second part of my Mix With Me series where we are working on the song Your Demise by Feared. In this episode, I am going to show you how I am going to go about mixing the kick, the snare, and the overhead mics of the drums. And then in the episode following this, I'm going to do the toms in the room and then get everything working together. The reason I'm doing it like that is just because if not, this video will be like an hour long. And in fact, I did make a video like that like 3 weeks ago now, which is why this video has been postponed a little bit, is due to school and the fact that the initial video was too long and I wasn't able to upload it. My computer wouldn't crash, but the program would crash as it was uploading, and yeah, so it just didn't work out. So I'm hoping this video is around 20 minutes. I like to mix pretty quickly. I try to. So we'll see how that goes. So one thing I'm going to emphasize as I go throughout this whole process is know what you want before you start mixing. And so obviously I've already listened to all the individual tracks, the kick, the snare, everything. So I kind of already know what I'm going for. And that's really going to help me with getting the sound that I want as opposed to just getting a good sound. Because there's a difference between getting a sound that is good and a sound that is right. So without further ado, I am going to start on the kick. Normally I would start on the snare, but on this one I'm going to start on the kick because this is pretty much just like a straight up middle song, and it's the kick that really drives everything. But typically I will start with the snare because I like to have that be like my relative balance point, where the snare will be like the loudest thing in the mix, and it still will be, but I want to get this kick driving first. So here we have a sample kick, and forewarning, the music audio is going to be quite significantly louder than my voice, so I'll give you like 5 seconds to adjust your audio just in case until you find like a happy point. So, okay, so here is the sample kick. And as you can hear, it is very sampled. So the first thing I want to do is take away some of that sampled sound, but also add some low end, because it's a very clicky kick, which is good for middle, but it doesn't have tons of low end. And so the first thing I'm going to do is go with this VCC channel, and I really like this thing. This Brit 4N on kick just works in my opinion. I really like it. It kind of help add some body to it and smooth out the low end, or the top end, sorry. I don't want it to clip too much, but adding just a little bit of input adds some nice color to it. And the drive also helps add some more body to it. So I like what that did. That was very simple little thing, but it makes everything just sound better, in my opinion. I love throwing this on most of my drum tracks. Just makes your kick just more. I really like that. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to EQ this a bit. And with the EQ, what I'm kind of going for here, if we look at the curve, you can kind of see that, oops. You can see that the low end and the top end are pretty even, and there's a dip in the middle, but we had a lot of stuff going on right in here that I'm going to need to take care of. And since this is middle, we like extreme things, so probably going to boost some low end and some high end as well. Makes your kick sound a little bit deeper and get rid of some of that pillowy sound. So this just, again, gets rid of that more mid-rangey. Like, I like a very scoop sounding kick for metal. This is just getting rid of some of the sub-lows just so they don't mess anything up, because some parts of the kick are very fast and I don't want too much rumble. This adds some nice air to the kick. And then this just adds some nice, like, what I call like thucky sound. I know that's like a weird term for it, but I'll take it away and you'll hear what I mean. So yeah, I kind of like how that's sounding. So, just like 5, 6 things here. Some of them are a little extreme, but hey, I like it. Okay, so after that, so we've had some console simulation, we've EQ'd it. Let's go with a compressor. Oops. Let's go with the Waves C1. I like this compressor for kick. I also like this one. This is a really awesome one. And typically I'll do it with like, something like this. Add a little bit of drive to it. If I didn't use this, I don't always do that. But this is a really awesome one. But for this specific one, I want to use the Waves C1. I'll use this more for like, not like straight up just like borderline death metal. I'll use it more for like rock or prog or whatever you want to call stuff that isn't metal, like just straight up death metal. So I like this one. And I've kind of got some like go-to settings that I do. So I'm just going to type those in. You can copy them down if you want. And then I'm going to play with the threshold until I'm getting about like minus, like there, -8 dB of reduction. And the reason I like these settings for this is because on the parts where it does fast doubles, it's almost like an automatic automation to where it dips quieter. You can kind of hear that when it goes from singles to some triples. So yeah, I like that. I like those settings for the kick. The next thing I want to do is add a little bit more body to the kick because it's still very clicky. So I'm on the wrong thing. Let's go with the virtual tape machine. And to add some body to the kick, I like doing this. 2" 16, FG456, and 15 IPS. And I'm just going to increase the input. I don't want it to clip because that sounds bad on the kick. But I'm going to get to where it's just borderline not clipping. And you can hear that just added some nice body to it, rounded out the top end a bit too. After that, Let me listen for what I feel like I might need. One thing that you'll notice I'll do is I'm going to mix everything by itself first, and then I'm going to incorporate it with the rest of the mix and then adjust from there. That's one thing I like to do, and because I pretty much know what I'm going for, and so I'll get there pretty much by itself, put it in the mix, and then get there the rest of the way. And honestly, that's something that will continue on as the entire mix evolves too. So the last thing I want to do is I think I'm going to add some multiband compression on this just to tame the low end a little bit more. And so again, these are just some go-to settings that I have. I might even have it saved as a preset. No, I don't. I just have this bass one, which I'll use later on when I do the bass video. But I like these settings because it just barely touches it. I'll play around with the threshold. But it just tames the low end just a little bit so that on super fast double kick parts, your low end isn't just exploding your speakers. All right, and then I will send it to some parallel compression. You can see I send it at like that much about, might adjust it. Let's go into this, and again, if you didn't watch the first video, which I recommend you go watch the first video to understand why all this is already here. This is my parallel compression setting. Screenshot it, whatever you want. It's the same one Nolly of Periphery uses. And that is my kick. So if I mute all of this so we don't hear that crap. So this is the drums currently. Oh, get the bass out of there too, sorry. We got a couple other elements that are a little bit too loud right now, but I feel like the kick is driving pretty well. Cool. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on to the snare, which sounds like this as of right now. And the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the sample for right now. And then I will bring it back in later on if I need it. But I like to get the natural snare sounding the best that I can from the start. All right, and I like my top to be, I didn't realize that was still on there. Like I said, I mixed this before and the video wouldn't upload, so I cleared everything off and apparently this was still here. So sorry about that. I will actually remove this. I don't want that. So again, this helps control the amount of bleed that's coming through, like dramatically. And I'm not going to go through how this is set up. You can just kind of look if you want, or I can make a video on it. If you can do this with any multiband compressor. But this is just the one that I use. And you can hear the hi-hat just like goes away. It's awesome. And then for the snare bottom, I always put that on the snare top. It just sounds really, it just helps. Because then on the bus, I can boost as much high end as I want and not have to worry about hi-hat bleed. On this one, I like to extend the sustain of the actual like snare. And then just this weird ass thing. I don't even know. Just here's all the settings if you want them. I just like how it makes the bottom snare sound. It just works. It's one of those things. I just have it. There it is. So, and then I like to get a balance between the two. I usually have this one about like 8 dB less than the top. In this instance, let me get out of a blast beat section. Alright, I like it right there, about -6 currently. Might change it later on. Alright, so now we're just going to focus on the actual snare bus itself. So the first thing I want to do, there's still a little bit of bleed, which is fine. I'm not going to get rid of the bleed entirely because that's what helps glue the whole thing together. But I do have this gate setting that I like. And the reason I like this setting so much is because it will not kill your ghost notes. It doesn't completely kill hi-hat bleed and whatnot, but it does it enough to where you're really only hearing your snare. Awesome. I really like how this snare sounds. So the next thing is we haven't done any EQ yet, so let's do some EQ. And I don't hear any annoying ringing frequencies. So I'm just going to do some additive EQ, and my favorite one to do that with for the snare is this Kush Audio Electra. This thing is awesome. If you don't know this plugin, go look it up. It's pretty unique. I'm not going to explain it because you can go look it up yourself. But I'm going to play around with this with some settings that I know I typically go to for snare. I also like to use this on like toms and even kick a little bit. It's just a really good additive EQ for your drums. Awesome. I like how that sounds. And like I said, as you can see, I try to go pretty quick when I'm mixing. There's no rhyme or reason. Just I move knobs until I like how it sounds, then I move on. So the next thing I want to do is add some compression to this, and I like this compressor for snare. And I have a go-to setting. You can write it down if you want or screenshot. And I'm usually going for, actually I forgot I did this at one point. I don't want that. I usually like to go for about -8 dB of reduction to 10 at the most. Just makes the punch of the snare a lot more. Kind of tames the high end a bit, kind of smooths it out, but doesn't get rid of it. Really exaggerates the pop of the snare, which I like a lot. So the next thing I want to do is add just a little bit more body to this snare, because I really like a punchy, just explosive snare. And a pretty solid trick for doing that is adding some console emulation at the end, which is like the opposite of what it's supposed to be used for, but it works. And I like this Brit 4KG, and I already know, just boost the drive, boost the input, clip the shit out of it, and just let it go. You're going to get more bottom snare, you're going to get more like explosiveness from it. It's just going to sound good. And the last thing I'm going to do is just to add some more body to it, because why not? You know, it's metal. Do everything to the extreme. It's going to add this at the end of it. Same settings as I do with the kick, but this time I will clip it. Alright, and then I will send that to my parallel bus at 0, and then need some reverb. That's very important. A lot of my snare sound comes from reverb. A lot of everyone's snare sound should come from reverb, or the snare room, or I mean not snare room, the room mic itself, but I do like to use reverb. So there's a couple of reverbs that I like that I can go to. Let's see. Kind of my go-to is where is it? This one, Verbiage. A lot of people use it, but I just recently updated my Verb Suite Classics from Slate Digital, so let's just try one of those. That one's kind of cool. I like that one. Let's go with that one. Why not? It's got some cool stuff going on. Alright, so that's probably the end of my snare. Let's see how it sounds in context with just snare and kick. Let's get a balance between the two. Alright, I like how that sounds. Let's hear it in context with the rest of the drums. Alright, I like what we're getting so far. Some balance issues, but I'll take care of that once all the drums are actually mixed. So the last thing I want to do for this video is these overhead mics. I'm not going to do anything on the individual tracks themselves. I'm just going to do it on the bus. Let's hear how these overhead mics sound. So what I really want to do with these overhead mics is help get the snare through, which a lot of people try to just get everything but the overhead mics and the overheads, and I don't like to do that. I will get out the low annoying stuff like the tom rumble and the kick rumble, but the actual body of the snare I want coming through my overheads. And I'm actually going to cut some high end out of the overheads because crashes are annoying. So let's find a part with a lot of crashes. That's usually where I like to work on my overheads. And I should explain why, is because crashes are annoying. They have just a lot, they get hit the most. And your other overhead mics are typically, they don't have that like high end, I don't even know what to call it. Just like this, you'll see. There's like a bundle of just high end energy on the crashes. Here we go. We'll work here a bit. Maybe not. I actually like how these overheads sound as they are. I may not do too much to them. There's not as many crash hits as I thought. Like I said, this is the point of these videos, is to watch me mix these. Like, this is me going through it. This is how I mix. I'm just trying to tell you guys things I'm listening for as I go. Alright, but that one, I think it's the China or something. I don't know. I don't know drums that well. I just know how I want them to sound. That cymbal's annoying enough. I'm going to focus on that. Everything else, I'm kind of happy with how it sounds. That's that little block of energy I was talking about. I'm going to try to tame that. Just a little annoying sound I was hearing. Fished it out. So that kind of helps tame that kind of like high end for when that cymbal does get hit. It's way less annoying. So another fun thing to do on your overhead is, like I said, I love this plugin on drums, is console emulation. And this is actually more for the snare. And a fun one for this is, again, the Brit 4N. This is going to help bring out the snare some more. And whoops, I like to drive it again. Yeah. And then the last thing, I'm going to, actually, I can do it on here. Something that's fun to do to add some high-end pizzazz to your overhead is a little bit of distortion. Just a little bit. In this part, listen really closely to the hi-hat and how the top end of it changes as I turn this on. I'm going to start with it off. You can see it just kind of blooms and blossoms a little bit more, and the snare drum itself gets a little bit more body to it. So I really like doing that. So the last thing that I will do is I will compress my overheads just a little bit. And I'm only going for like 3 dB of reduction. And I'm not even going to do it. I'm going to mix it at 50-50 because I'm not going for anything extreme here. I like to get the compressor set to where it's pulling about 3 dB reduction, but when I turn it on and off, the volume doesn't really change. Alright, and that is my overhead. Send a little bit to the parallel compressor, just so it sees it. I'm actually going to do a little bit less. A little bit more for the kick. Alright, so let's see how the overheads and the snare all sound together. Alright, so I'm hearing something annoying and I'm trying to figure out what it is. I have too much bottom snare. All my stuff I did here brought it up too much and I need to lower it now. And I'm actually going to bring in this trigger just a bit, mainly for the blast beat part. Cool. I'm liking how that sounds. I like the reverb on the snare. I like the punchiness of the kick, and I feel like the overheads have some nice high end to them, but it's not abrasive on your ears. Awesome. So that will conclude this video for the snare, the drums, and the overhead. On the next video, like I said, I'm going to do the toms and rooms and these little miscellaneous mics. And then I will get a balance of everything. And then that will be the drums. And then from there, I'll continue moving on. One thing I would like to ask of the viewers, if you're watching this series as it comes out, if you're watching this in the future, then just, click on the next video for the whatever in the series that you want to watch. But for the future, would you guys like to see me reamp the bass and the guitars and the leads through my actual amps and my cabinets? Or would you like me to see me work completely in the box where I'm using plugins to do everything and get the sounds that I think will work? Leave a comment down below what you would like to see, just so, I like to ask this question ahead of time so I know what you guys would like, because I know not everyone has like real gear and like a reamp box and all that stuff. So I can work in the box, which means I can do this with just plugins, or if you guys would like me to reamp it and see how I deal with actually miking up my cabinet, and how I choose like positions and whatnot, I would probably do a little segment on that too. So let me know down below, but hopefully this was informative and you can get some ideas to do with your snare, drums, or your snare, your kick, and your overhead, and hopefully give it a thumbs up, share it so that others can learn, and thank you for watching. Tune in soon, and I will try to get the next video up as quickly as I can. Thank you.